right. Well, hey, thanks for being here. Welcome to SMOOV. We're hopping on a live stream today to answer some questions about animal flow, primal movement, and how you can get started. Also want to touch on some form specific things along with some modifications. So received a ton of those questions and really excited to hop in and answer those. So I'll be sitting here answering a few questions, and I'll also be getting down on the black circular mat to get some of those form specific questions answered. So yeah, we have questions split up into 4 different sections. So general overview, exercise programming questions, form and modifications, and lastly, some personal questions, and these are from all the subscribers out there. So thanks so much for hopping on those videos and asking questions. That's really a great way to ingratiate yourself in the learning process. If you have any questions that you want answered that I haven't answered yet or whatever, drop them in the chat and I'll save a little time at the end so you can dive in, or so we can dive into those. And lastly, before we hop in, if you like this format, I'd like to be doing more of this and bringing more of this into the channel. So you can let me know that you like it by giving this video a thumbs up, leaving a comment below, and of course, subscribing to the SMOOV channel. Let's get going. All right, so first question, just a general overview. What is animal flow? So animal flow is a bodyweight training system that focuses on ground-based movement inspired from practices of gymnastics, capoeira, parkour, yoga, and so on. I personally find this system super accessible and a great starting point for anyone out there who wants to start exploring different forms of movement. Yeah, that's animal flow. What is the difference between animal flow and primal movement? So I view primal movement as more of an overarching term to describe movement that is functional, natural, and innate to the human development and biology. So let's see if we can hash that out and have it be a little bit more simple. Yeah, this is stuff that you do every day. It's stuff that you did as a child or an infant, and in building your movement patterns. And so going through these movement patterns, let's say from a very base level, can be considered that primal movement, and then even scaling it up into more of this dynamic animal movement that's a little bit more challenging, still touching on a lot of the quadrupedal movement, which allows us to tap into those patterns. And you can also view primal movement not only as that ground movement, but quadrupedal locomotion, bipedal or standing locomotion, so our gait pattern, which is also going to take us into swinging, throwing, some rotational stuff, and then lifting and carrying. All this stuff is definitely in our biology in terms of how we moved as hunter and gatherers, and now where we are as humans in the modern world. So if you want to restore your body to more of that primal instinct, this is a great place to start with primal movement. And with that, animal flow is simply a system that focuses on primal movement. So animal flow was created by this guy, Mike Fitch, a really amazing mover. And with that, he created a system that is very simple to follow. So we're going to focus on 3 base positions: ape, beast, and crab. So the ABCs of animal flow. You can already see how that simplification of, let's say, primal movement into a system can be supportive in the learning process. So we'll dive more into that a little bit later on, but did want to get that one out of the way. Did I invent this type of exercise? Absolutely not. Anybody that's telling you they invented some sort of exercise, they're probably lying to you. None of this stuff is new. It has been around since the beginning of time. Movement has been around with animals before humans, and then of course this human movement that we go through. So yeah, I haven't invented anything. I certainly like to combine and create off of other frameworks, and you'll see some of that in some of my videos where I call things a few different labels as opposed to some of the stuff covered in animal flow. So it's just a simple way to, not a simple way. This stuff is very big, right? So if we simplify things down into a system, it can help us learn, but do know that some of the inspirations or just kind of the systems involved with bringing this more into popularity. Animal flow, Ginástica Natural, which is based on a lot of capoeira movements combined with BJJ movements. So that's a really cool system. And I've gotten a lot of people in the comments letting me know, hey, this stuff is really similar to that. Natural movement, Ido Portal has done a ton of stuff with locomotion. Absolutely check his stuff out. And then parkour and yoga, you know, all this stuff, you can see elements of it and combining into something that is accessible and fun to practice. All right. What is the point of primal movement / animal flow? So this could also be labeled into like, why do we do it? But I find, you know, what's the point of it? Well, it's a simple and minimalist way to train the entire body, which I find really appealing. I can take this anywhere I go. I don't need any sort of equipment, and I can get a really good workout. Getting back to those foundational patterns that I was talking about to restore your movement capabilities, when you start to tap into those patterns, you can start to tap into that stage of malleability and neuroplasticity, and we can get back to our roots with our movement. Yeah, and neuroplasticity there, challenging the brain and having fun. When you're going through any sort of primal movement practice, there are going to be moments where your brain breaks. And that's a really good sign that this is something that is worth doing in terms of not only challenging your body, but challenging your brain. So if you notice frustration bubble up, take a few breaths and know that this is a good thing that's happening to you. You're challenging your brain and you're opening up new possibilities with your movement and far more possibilities with your creativity. All right, what are the benefits? Well, I kind of just talked on a few of those, but yeah, improved strength and mobility is going to be a big one there, going through these full body movements. Core strength and function, there's a lot of rotation and getting into some of these throwing or sling patterns of the body. So even if you're not actually throwing something with some of these movements, they can start to train some of that core functionality that we want. So we don't just want to have this bracing or this strength in our core, we also want the ability to use it and have a better sense of our center, how to move through that center. Increased body awareness and coordination. So this is really that brain stuff that I was talking about. Like you show up for a practice enough and you're gonna start to better understand your body, have more awareness of how your body moves through space and also where your body is in space. And then as you start to get into stringing together some of these movements into sequences, there's going to be a huge coordination and balance aspect in there, and I think that's really a great opportunity to open up that brain and all those possibilities. Who could benefit from this style of training? So I just created like a few archetypes off of this. I could easily say anyone. If you watch Animal Flow or you watch Primal Movement and that looks like something that you want to do, or it feels like something you want to do, then it's for you, right? That I'll share a little bit later on with some personal anecdotes, but that's really what drew me to it. It looked like something that resonated with my body. But a few of these archetypes, so you're an active individual who wants to add more fun into their fitness routine. Fun is really a huge aspect of showing up for fitness. So if you're able to insert in more of that, make it more enjoyable, it's going to be easier to show up for. Another one, gotten a lot of this just feedback in the comments of some of those Animal Flow videos. Yogis who want to prioritize strength and expand their movement capabilities. So if you notice some of these movements, there's with yoga, they might be a little bit more linear with some bending. This really allows more degrees of freedom, and I think it's a really good spot for yogis to start to expand their movement practice and start to tap into a little bit more strength in their practice. Someone who is simply looking to get back in shape. This is a great way to do it, and again, a fun way to do it. So if you're wanting to get back into shape, enjoyment is going to have to be a big piece of that to sustain that, not only getting back into shape, but staying in shape. And then, yeah, someone who wants to move with more flow. Wow. Move with more flow. The inability to have that flow out of my mouth right there. Luckily, we're going to get down on the mat and do a little animal flow, or at least show you a few positions. So maybe that will help my mouth coordinate into some flow. But yeah, this has been a great practice for me to get out of rigidity and start to bend those shapes and feel into more expression and creativity in my body. So highly encourage anybody who wants to move with more flow or just have more flow in their life, give this stuff a shot. All right, let's move on to that next section. So exercise programming questions. So I received some questions around frequency, what should I be doing, all this, and I think the easiest way to approach this is to really dial in a baseline program for you to follow. So I'll go through that Primal movement program here. And this is super general. Of course, you can modify it to make it fit your needs. But yeah, I'll answer those questions along the way. So how often should I do animal flow? To start out, I would say 2 to 3 times a week would be really money. Just getting this inserted into your schedule, let's say if you have an exercise program, you could insert this in 2-3 times, either in your workouts or also as something separate. And then if you're not doing anything, I'd say 2-3 times a week is a great way to just work yourself back into some sort of rhythm and routine with your exercise. Which movements should I start with? So in terms of animal flow, I think they really break this down, and why I love this as a starting place for anybody that's getting into primal movement. So you have different categories of movements. You have the wrist mobilizations, so that's gonna be a huge key when you're loading your wrist. And then you have your activations, which are gonna be those static, the static beast, static crab, and ape, which is essentially a squat position. And then there's some different limb lifts or activations you can do off of that. I have a whole video on this. It's called 34 Animal Flow Core Exercises. Definitely recommend checking that out for ways to scale up your activations. So we start with some really baseline stuff in each position, and then you can scale it up into some stuff that's a little bit more challenging. But ultimately, as you progress through this movement, that's what you're gonna need to keep things going and keep things progressive. Then we have traveling drills. So this is gonna be like the crawling and different forms of traveling. And then we have transitions. So this is gonna be how you transition from each position to the next. And then we have form-specific stretches is what Mike calls them. But you can just view these as some active stretches in these positions. So if you're able to hit on those 5 categories, I think that's a really solid place to go. And if we hop over here, I'll show you guys something I laid out specifically for you. So if we check this out, you've got these different phases. I just broke them into 3. Again, you can find stuff that works better for you. So let's say like certain movements come easier to you, then you could start with those. But I think breaking this into these 3 phases is a really great place to start. So wrist mobilizations, that phase 1, the activations are gonna be the static beast, crab, ape, and then add those limb lifts as you see fit. And then you have your traveling drills, just sticking with those first 3, traveling beast, traveling crab, and then the lateral ape. The lateral ape is a really good one to start with. and it really dials in some coordination and rhythm as well. And I find I'll also show you some modifications for that one. So if you can't do a lot of these moves, know that there's going to be a few that you can do. And then with transitions, the knee through, the under switch, the load to unload, and then the front step, those are going to be really money for that phase one. And then stretches, ape reach, bear squat, and wave unload. Those, if you cover the bases there, as you progress into phase two and phase three, those moves are going to be a lot more accessible. So like for instance, beast reach and scorpion reach, both of those come from the wave unload and the load to unload. So those will be easy progressions for you off of that. And all these moves, I should have prefaced this, all these moves are in the 20 animal flow exercises YouTube video. And so if you go over to my channel, you can see we got workouts, but we got these exercise libraries. So here we've got that 20 animal flow exercises. Everything that's listed in what I just showed you, I'm going to hop right back to it, is in there. And then we also have those core exercises that I was telling you about to scale up those activations. So coming back to this, again, you can just see some progression and weaving in some different movements as you progress through those phases. And, you know, feel free to pause this, screenshot this, or, you know what, I'll go ahead and throw it in the description below as well. So you just got a little sample program to work through. And then how do you work through this? So if we go into like sets and reps, so many of these movements are of different challenge, I guess. So let's say, I wouldn't say like do 20 wave unloads. Like that's going to be a crazy amount of volume and time under tension. So, but you probably could do 20 knee throughs super quick. So it's like, I'd much rather go for a time interval here, and that's typically what I do. So starting out with what I just showed you, picking, let's say 3 to 4 exercises, and you could do multiple circuits, right? So let's say I have a circuit of 3 to 4 exercises, and I'm gonna set a timer and work for 30 to 45 seconds with each one, and then rest for 15 to 30 seconds, and do 2 to 3 sets of that. That's going to be a really nice circuit, and that will last around 12 to 13 minutes. So if you stack 2 of those together, you're already going to be around a 30-minute workout. And I imagine and anticipate that you'll be pretty gassed and happy with where you're at there. So that's more with like the single exercises. And then eventually you can start to combine some movements together. So start to sequence some movements together. So 2 or more movements forming, let's say, more of a controlled flow, something that you can remember and just kind of have as a piece to add to your vocabulary. And then after a while, and when I would do like a controlled flow for like 60 seconds to 90 seconds, right? And so, and then after a while, you start to have those sentences or those fragments. You can just turn on some music or not and just flow and see what comes up, right? See what's available. And that's really open-ended. And this is where you can start to create with your movement and make this your own practice. So for instance, like you could really stay fixated into like animal flow. But as you start to get into the flow, you could do like choreographed flows, or you could really start to open things up and implement different practices in your primal movement flow. So that's really where we want to end up eventually, but we got to start with those single exercises in the circuit and then taking it into the sequences off of that. And I mentioned this already, how long should one training session last? You can get a good session in 15, 20 minutes. And as you progress, you know, add a circuit, add some more exercises, and be able to, you know, go for longer periods of time. And I do want to let you know, I've received some questions about making some follow-alongs. So I am going to put together a few of these sequences into that 15-minute range. So that way you have a quick and effective workout, and you can see how I string together some of these exercises, or like which ones am I putting in a circuit together, that sort of thing. So I do want to provide you with some examples as we go through this process of learning. Okay, tempo. This is a big one right here. I love this question. What tempo should I be performing these movements at? There's tons of benefit to performing these movements at a variety of tempos. So you want the ability to accelerate quickly through a movement, and then you also want the ability to stop on a dime and be able to change directions, and then everything in between, right? So if I'm moving through something, I want to find first that natural place of like, hey, this is the tempo I can work with. And then I can challenge myself by slowing it down. And I can also challenge myself by speeding it up. And so the answer to this question is just yes, all tempos. Make it happen. And you can absolutely make notes of this in your workouts. And you have noticed me do a few of these things in some workouts. So for instance, if you watched, oh man, it's a strength workout and we do the quiet cat, or this would be the quiet beast crawl, right? So we're really moving slowly through our hands, staying quiet and making sure that we're prioritizing that over moving really quickly. Of course, you could do the opposite. All right, long-winded response on the tempo. Yes, do them all, but yeah. So let's see. All right, so, I'd like to use a couple more on the programming stuff. I'd like to use animal flow routine for a 10 to 15 minute warm-up before I do my gymnastics rings workout. What routine would you recommend? So I haven't created anything specifically for a gymnastics rings workout, but I do have a 15-minute animal flow follow along. And well, if you go to this, the workouts right here, animal flow start here. This is a really good starting place. I go through a lot of activations. It's not like a crazy high tempo or whatever. And that would be a good one, I would say, for the gymnastics rings workout. Let's see how we're doing on time. Oh boy, all right, that escalated quickly. Let's see how we can get through this. I'm gonna have to do a part 2. All right, so another one, I was wondering if you could include a video of all of the moves that is a continuous, possibly repetitive flow of all 20 exercises, maybe 3 times each. So I am making more follow-alongs, and I'm gonna say no on this because all 20 moves is a lot to take on for a full workout. I might end up putting that together at some point once I have like some really good baseline stuff. But I think it's better to focus on like anywhere between 3 and 6 of these movements. And you know, a lot of them are gonna be in the same position. So it's not like we're overstimulating the system, but I'd much rather you focus on a smaller amount of movements and dial those in with really good intention than thinking you have to go through that whole list of 20 exercises. So yeah, the answer is no for now, but I am gonna put together those 15-minute ones, and if you do all 3 together, you will absolutely hit all 20 moves. So stay tuned for that. All right, so let's go ahead and get down on the ground and talk some modifications. So if you've been waiting for some actual action, we get to go here. So I'm just gonna set us up a little bit better. All right. So can you do some modifications on all of these moves, please? Whoever asked this question, thank you. And also give me some specificity on which ones are really challenging you and that you would like modifications for. There are a few that people have talked to me about already, so I'm gonna highlight those with some modifications. So first one, I'm just gonna say like the crawl. Let's say that beast travel or the cat crawl. If I wanna take this into something that's a little bit easier, this still is work for me, especially if I'm doing this for, you know, a couple minutes. I'm gonna go 6 points. So I'm gonna tuck those toes under. You know what? Let's take these socks off so you can see my feet. So I'm gonna tuck those toes under, remain with the knees on the ground, and then step, and then step. And I could also do this with the tops of the feet dragging on the ground as well. So this is gonna be a great way to just scale down that crawl and bring it back to something really primal. And I go over this in the video labeled Reset Your Body. And so the 6-point crawl is gonna be an excellent one for that. The other one that I get a lot of questions about is that lateral ape travel, or that lateral monkey. So if I come down into my squat here, maybe this is not accessible for you. So what can I do? Well, I can come into like a hinge, like so, a hinge squat or a squinge, and I can work with what's available. So I can reach down to the ground, plant the hand, and go through that lateral monkey or ape. So that's a good starting point there. And then the other thing I'd like to say about this is you don't have to turn this into a hand balancing exercise. So for example, like a lot of times people think, oh man, he's pressing into like this baby handstand. So you could start to put more weight, let's say, through your hands, but you could also just shuffle through the feet. So I could place my hands here, not a ton of weight through them, and then I'm going to shuffle and then land. Shuffle and then land. So I am starting to put a little bit more weight through my wrists and hands, but it's not a ton, and it's not something that I feel like I have to, let's say, donkey kick to get up there. And that will help you work up to it. The other one I like off of this for the lateral monkey is, let's say you feel like this is just hard for you to get into. Well, I can find a box or some surface and start to work on that. So I stand to the right of the chair, and I'm gonna reach across with my left hand, plant my right hand, put a little pressure through there, shuffle, and then I'm right through there, okay? So a simple way, if you feel like you really need to work up into that lateral monkey, or work down rather, that's gonna be a good one for you. Okay, a few more on form. What should I do if I'm not stretched enough to perform some of these, like the bear squat? I feel like my mobility doesn't even allow me to do it in 50% of that range. So the big thing with any like downward dog or bear is I want to feel active range, and I want this to be more hip crease. So that hip crease is going to happen more here. So if I'm doing this standing, I chop the hips. I could go pretty straight leg with it, but if I start to kind of round through the lower back there, I want to honor my active range. So you'll notice a lot of times some knee bend, and I'm feeling quite a lot of tension through the hamstrings and the glutes, and I'm able to load that. So if I were to take it into the bear squat, let's say I start down here and I load back into the this loaded bear position. I come up through my butt, and I want to feel that hip crease, right? I don't want to be rounded through the back there, at least in this one. And I'm going to try my best to straighten those legs out. But if I can't get those legs straight, not a big deal. So I can work with what I've got, and if that's right here and I just kind of pulse up and down, I work with my active range, honoring that hip crease, honoring leading with the butt up to the sky, pressing through the hands, and that's going to be a better experience for you in the bear squat. So I hope that helps, and that goes for a lot of different exercises. If you feel like you're compromising your spine or different areas of your body just to get a certain shape and it doesn't feel good, then go back to something that feels better for your body. All right. Flows look awesome. Only problem I'm having is with the narrow deep squat position. I've been working on my ankle mobility, and I can sit in a deep squat if my feet are pointed out and a little wider than shoulder width apart. Any tips? So great question. I think I displayed this a lot in my video or several of my videos, and that's going to be a little bit more of this narrow squat. And you can see off of this, I'm in this active position off of my heel, okay? So my toes are pointing forward, and this really allows me to stack the joints really nicely, but it might be tough to get the heels down. Now I can do that, and what this question's asking about is I can't get that position without, let's say, my heels hitting the ground or whatnot. So know that you can elevate those heels and it's fine, just making sure we're balancing more on midfoot, not so much toes. And then what we can do off of that, it's totally fine to, let's say, point your toes out a little bit and sink into this, okay? So we still want to feel that engagement through the hips. So if you feel like you're compromising your spine and your ability to stay in your hips and you're feeling a ton of knee, all that, that's okay to come off of the heels and come out with your feet a little bit. So you do need to widen out. If you do need to widen out, point your toes out. That's cool, all right? Don't want to go too much into some of the other details on that, but well, if you got some follow-up questions, let me know. All right, let's see. Okay, forearm pain when crawling. So that's going to be a big one for, let's say, elbow, shoulder, and wrist, just how they're communicating. So those wrist MOVs are going to be really good. I think the person who asked this question was actually experiencing a little bit more tennis elbow, which is kind of surprising. A lot of times we'll get more of that. This would be golfer's elbow. Not that you need to be playing those sports to get those particular flare-ups, but inside, that can be something that extra load through the elbow, and then outside could be elbow, but it also could be a lot through, let's say, wrist and some musculature coming here. My favorite thing to do for wrist pain and forearm pain, and this is going to feed into that elbow as well, is I'm going to twist the tissue. So I'm twisting the tissue around, and then I'm twisting my thumb or rotating my hand out. And the reason I'm doing this is we can start to open up more mobility through our forearm, through our wrist, and all that connection by rotating. There's two bones here. That means they're meant to rotate. And I can start to press through, let's say, through my hand, through the heel of my hand, and then I can work on just pinning down some of that tissue there. Really nice. So I encourage you to pin some tissue down and start to rotate through with it. And I do recognize I need to create more of a wrist-focused video for wrist MOVs and some of the different things like this. So really appreciate the question, and I hope that helps. Let me know. All right. Are animal flow exercises bad for scoliosis? Very interesting question. General answer, I would say focus more on the connection between your pelvis and your rib cage, or essentially hips and shoulders. And so that relationship, along with what's happening through your spine and more of these functional rotational movements, if you start to go into a bunch of rotation with scoliosis and that relationship with your breath and with your rib cage and pelvis, that could add some trickiness to it and may not be great for you. So you could very much work on some of the things that we're right about to go into in this next question. So, so yeah, that's what I'd say for scoliosis there. So breathing, may there be some inhales and exhales too. So he's referring to that 20 animal flow exercise video where I guess I didn't give too much breathing cueing, but absolutely make sure you're breathing during these exercises, and we can go into what we want to be focusing on with that. And so these are kind of the same thing. This is more of a comment. I'll also add that you should tell people how to core breathe while doing these as it pertains to side ab engagement under load. It's something Connor Harris and Bill Hartman are experts at, but they don't deal with anything but PRI style exercises. PRI is postural restitution, postural restorative, something like that, institute. Sorry. So I think a lot of that stuff you can just get in with any sort of exercise that you're doing, but I would say some of these ground positions are going to be great for that. So if I'm coming down into, let's say, this 6-point, and I'm just pulling my shirt up for a little expansion and breathing. So I'm in this position. I want to make sure I'm driving my hands through the ground and I'm feeling some nice serratus, or kind of the musculature around the rib cage activation. I want to slightly tilt my pelvis back. Okay, so I'm not flinging it back like crazy, but just a little load where I start to feel some tensioning through the hips, and this is going to allow me to feel my core really come into place with connecting the rib cage and the pelvis. And then all I'm going to do is simply breathe. And I might feel some tension there already because my core is activated from holding this position. And I want to breathe into that compression or tension there and feel into expansion through the body. So if I elevate my knees off the ground and I'm in this beast position, I'm breathing into some of that core bracing or activation, and then exhale. We don't have to really do too much there. We just want to focus on a nice exhale, which is going to naturally bring our core in. So I don't have to vacuum it. I don't have to squeeze or brace it a bunch. I simply want to maintain a good breathing pattern as I go through holding some of these positions. And then the other thing is with some of these exercises, let's say like this scorpion reach. So I come back here. I'm going to exhale as I come forward. Inhale as I open up, exhale as I come back down, and then inhale as I come back through here. So exhale, open up, exhale, inhale, setting back. All right. So in those movements where we're feeling some transition of weight, finding an inhale or exhale as we go through that is going to be really helpful. You can practice that same sort of core breath that we're talking about here. Breathing is such a massive topic. I know that's just a tiny little bit of time spent on it, but I hope that's helpful, and any specific questions, hit me with them. All right. Let's see where we're at. Oh no. All right. We're gonna have to cut this one short because I'm dealing with 38 minutes. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining. We got one question here. Okay. If the posterior horn of the medial meniscus was stitched, how does this affect the knee menisci? So, specific question here. I mean, my question is, if you go through any of these movements, are you experiencing some of that catching? Are you experiencing any sort of pain or whatnot? There is a little bit more rotation involved with some of these movements, and that's what we really have to worry about with the meniscus. You've got it stitched though, so as long as you've healed up, I think this stuff would be a really good fit for you. But I'm sorry to have this question just kind of glazed over at the end. So yeah, I'm gonna reach out and I will give you a more, just a better answer overall. but yeah, let me know, follow up with me if any of that stuff is bothering you as you're going through these exercises. That could be something that you'd want to avoid for the time being, and then we could gradually add some more rotation. All right, sweet. Well, thank you so much for hopping on the live stream, whether it's in person here or in the future. So I'll be back with more of this stuff. Again, Let me know if you enjoy this format, like the video, leave us a comment, what you found valuable, what you wanted to learn more about. And lastly, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. We'll be back with more. Stay smooth.